Hi there, Kerry here, and welcome back to the channel if you're a frequent visitor, and if you're new, welcome to the channel. As usual, I am here today to review a book that I've just finished, well, finished about a week ago, and that book is Fatty Fatty Boom Boom by Rabia Chaudry. Now this book is a memoir, delves into several topics. The basic gist of it is her life from her early years in Pakistan through to her current success as a lawyer, podcaster and author. Now Rabia Chaudry became famous back in about 2013, 14, 15 when she hosted the podcast Serial. It was one of the earliest true crime podcasts. I've never been a fan of those, so I didn't really take much notice of it at the time. But at some point I followed her on Twitter, and she then put out a podcast about the jinn culture in Islamic thought and jinns around the world, and that was most fascinating, and I subscribed to that. So I've come to know her a little bit. And on her Twitter feed about a year ago, she started promoting this memoir, and it came out towards the end of 2022. Now the memoir starts basically with her parents meeting in Pakistan, and she deftly uses that to send us through the layers of culture and traditions in that country, and it's most fascinating. It's more interesting than I thought it was going to be. I really enjoy learning about all the different cultures and the traditions and the foods. Foods play a massive part in this book, and we learn about all the different foods and what traditions, what festivals and ceremonies the foods are related to. She spares no space describing the foods, the taste, the textures, the ingredients, how they're made, who makes them in the family. You also spend quite a lot of time visiting food vendors in Pakistan. The family often goes on like midnight runs to some specific vendor where some special food is made, and we follow her and her family along with that. And she is very appreciative of the food. She enjoys the food, and that, like I said, becomes a big theme, and also leads on to the other theme of this book. It's her ongoing battle with body image. She, as a small child, the family really feeds her up with a really high fattening food, and she soon becomes much more bulkier and larger than her fellow family and friends. She says that she takes more after the male side of the family, but the family become very cruel to her because of her bulk and size, and they call her the Pakistani equivalent of fatty, which obviously hurts her feelings, and it leads to her issues with body image, and that's something that leads along through her life. Now, when she's a child, her father gets recruited as a vet for the United States government. They move to the United States, move around a few different communities, and try and fit in with the new life, while still trying to hang on to their traditions and culture. They meet other Pakistani and South Asian communities and mix with them, and of course food is a large part of that as well. They have shared dinners, they visit each other, and the food never kind of stops. We also find her discovering Western foods, snacks, pizza, that type of thing, and the family enjoys those as well, and she especially enjoys those, much to her detriment when it comes to her obesity and body image issues. Third strand of the story is really family itself, the ever-changing nature of families and relationships. She often, after moving to the United States, she often goes back and visits Pakistan, and every time she goes, the family has changed and morphed and mutated. Different people have come and gone, people have died, people have married, new people have been born, and that kind of becomes another thread of the story. And this story takes her right through from a childhood through to her school days, university, and she gets herself into a quite unhappy marriage, and her husband kind of resents her for studying to become a professional. It's only slightly hinted at, but it seems that he physically abuses her, so she leaves him eventually after having a child. She struggles through her life as a student, trying to work many jobs and doing all sorts of things at once, and she gets quite stressed, quite quite dark thoughts pass through her head. In the meantime, she's also having to deal with her body issues, and she, does things like joining a gym or takes part in various fad diets and crazes. Eventually, she finds happiness after a few drastic changes. She changes her studies to law, and she becomes an excellent law student. Takes her final exams after I think she takes 2 or 3 attempts to pass the bar exam. Finally makes it. And then she starts making a real difference in people's lives. And my only complaint about the book is really after the detailed stuff about her childhood and the food and whatever, the stuff about her later life from like the serial podcast onward is really compressed down. That we rip through from that right to the present day. There's not much detail, and I would have liked a little more detail about the things she does. And currently she's involved in many associations and boards and human rights groups and all that type of thing. We get very little of that in this book. She's not interested in really telling us much about that. It's more the food, family and culture. Now, I was really fascinated by the Pakistani culture stuff. Like I said in my written review, it's not often that I've read books where Pakistan is treated as its own thing. It's always partly referred to as something connected to the conflict in Afghanistan or terrorism or politics and military coups or whatever. But this book just lets you see Pakistani people and culture as they are, their traditions, and that was a kind of breath of fresh air for me. Excuse me. So I enjoyed this book. It's like a little window into a world that I wasn't really aware of, and it's also a window into the inner thoughts of somebody who faces issues that you may not see all the time. People struggle with these things, but they don't say anything about it, and it's an interesting view into somebody else's struggle, which may or may not be similar to your own, that you haven't told anyone about. So that is Fatty Fatty Boom Boom. Hang on, I'll turn the screen on. There we go. Fatty Fatty Boom Boom by Rabia Chaudry. Interesting memoir, stories about food, family and culture. There's also a little section in the back which actually tells you some recipes for various Pakistani dishes. It's quite interesting as well. I'm not about to attempt to do any of them, but it just gives you the methods and the ingredients and how she's learnt from her family to cook these various dishes. So that's that book. Meanwhile, I have been reading this book, The Bullet That Missed by Richard Osman, one of the Thursday Murder Club stories, the latest one. Finished it last night, so a review of that will be coming soon as well. Really enjoyed it, but I think he really needs to reel it back in a bit. It's getting a little too much like Fantasyland. So we'll be reviewing that one very shortly. In other news, it is the 29th of December, so we've had Christmas, New Year's on the horizon. And today is one of the hottest days of the year here in Christchurch. It's meant to get up to 32 degrees. It's close to that already, so hence the sweat if you can see it. I had some double whammy of bad news lately. My job has gone and I've been diagnosed as diabetic. So I'm dealing with that things, hence the videos aren't coming as quickly as you may like. We'll try and get things back on the track shortly. Just need to sort out a few issues and then we'll be all go. So that is the book, that is my life. We'll see you next time.